1945, when the United States conducted its first nuclear weapons test at the Trinity site in southern New Mexico, the atomic era was born. With it came the need to learn more about nuclear technology. Scientists wanted to study how nuclear devices worked, to conduct weapons effects tests, and learn more about nuclear detonations. So nuclear testing began. I'm Brenda Fleming, and this is the National Security Science Podcast, a spin-off of Los Alamos National Laboratory's National Security Science magazine. We bring you stories from the lab's weapons program, stories that show how innovative science and engineering are the key to keeping America safe. This episode marks the first of a three-part series on nuclear testing. We'll introduce you to some former Los Alamos scientists who played pivotal roles in America's nuclear testing throughout the 20th century up until today. We'll also meet current scientists who are developing new methods to learn about nuclear science without conducting full-scale nuclear tests. Our team traveled to the Nevada National Security Site to explore the history of nuclear testing, how it started, how it ended, and what scientists are doing now. We begin the three-part series by joining the magazine's Jill Gibson as she embarks on a technical orientation visit to the Nevada National Security Site, which was formerly the Nevada Test Site and before that the Nevada Proving Grounds. The site is located about an hour north of Las Vegas in a highly secure area chosen in 1951 for its remote location. It stretches across 1,355 square miles, making it larger than the state of Rhode Island. Between 1951 and 1992, a total of 928 nuclear tests were conducted at the site, 828 of which were underground. 3 retired scientists led the tour. The guides spent much of their careers at the Nevada National Security Site and took part in nuclear testing before the 1992 moratorium. As Jill explains, like many sightseeing ventures, the visit begins on a bus.
This is the last part of the four-lane highway. After this, it goes back to a 2-lane road.
As we drive through the vast desert expanse of the Nevada National Security Site, our bus pulls past a handful of weathered wooden benches. In the 1950s, VIPs and reporters sat on these benches to watch atmospheric nuclear detonations. Ground Zero was about 10 miles away from where the audience sat.
We have lots of pictures of people on those benches getting knocked off the benches and, people that were standing up, falling down.
One of the leaders of our tour, senior scientist Byron Ristvit, spent many years working at the site. He now serves as a consultant for the Defense Threat Reduction Agency. Ristvit explains what it was like for people witnessing an atmospheric detonation. He says the onlookers were handed protective goggles, and the experience started with a bright flash.
And you lift up your goggles and you realize there's this fireball that's still extremely bright, and you put your goggles back on. But the thing you notice too is the front of your body is very warm. We have films of people sitting on the benches, and on a damp morning their clothes are sort of steaming, and that's just from the thermal pulse. And then all of a sudden the ground goes up and down, and it's sort of like being in a small earthquake. You feel kind of queasy for a second or so, and that's the air blast-induced ground shock, which runs across the desert at 5, 6, 7,000 feet per second. Of course, here comes the shock wave, and it's flattening down all the bushes. It's like having a 100-pound person running into you at about 90 miles an hour. And so if you're not really braced expecting it, you're going to get knocked on your ass. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
The bus rolls on past a series of trenches where military personnel once trained to fight through a nuclear attack. Farther down the highway, various nuclear effects tests were conducted. We pass decades-old wreckage, twisted rebar, crumpled metal, and concrete rubble remain from destroyed buildings, shelters, and even a bank vault.
This was built because people were concerned about A, with their money supply be in good shape, and B, would critical papers be fine.
But there's another effect that happens, which we've been warned about by people who saw these high-yield detonations. They're different on your psyche.
Retired Los Alamos National Laboratory astronomer Tom Kunkel says people who witnessed the testing will never forget the experience.
These effects on how you think, they're just horrifying is what we hear. And it's an effect of nuclear weapons that we were told about by many people who witnessed these, but isn't widely appreciated. And the effects of nuclear weapons that are working out the same old, what's the effect of the gamma rays? And they're more than that. It's the effect on people and how people think and react to perceive.
Despite this, or perhaps because of this, former Los Alamos lab director Harold Agnew definitely believed in the importance of nuclear testing.
Now, Harold's comment about this. Harold Agnew, who witnessed these, is once a decade the world leaders ought to be stripped down to their underwear and stood 30 miles away from a high-yield weapon and made to feel the heat on their skin.
We visit a wood-sided house built to investigate whether a typical family home could survive a nuclear detonation.
It was a house that you could buy as a kit at the time out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog. It's a sort of a standard, basic 3-bedroom, 2-story type house. You had the mannequins in there, and the clothing, the mannequins were donated by JCPenney.
The shell of the house still stands, although decades of weather damage have taken a toll on it. So this was civil defense research.
Right. Yeah, that's a standard atomic bomb. So we got over there, 20 kilotonish, exact yield doesn't really much matter. And this little house here is just, a house, and it's basically fine. So, atomic bombs are destructive, but they're within limits.
Despite their lighthearted tone, the scientists took their work extremely seriously.
See, I came in '65, and the testing started up after the previous moratorium in '61.
As we travel
so
over
really
rough ground to see more former test locations, retired Los Alamos test director Ron Cosme explains that he feels the test played a pivotal role in keeping the country safe.
I've been asked many times, why were you so warmongering? I said, no, you got the wrong idea. I actually have a hat that says 50 years without a major war by testing.
Despite Cosme's conviction, protesters were often prevalent at the site.
Protesters would step across the white line we're going right over right now, then be on our territory, and we had a bunch of portal buildings in here, and they would be, handcuffed, quote unquote, or they're just restrained and then hauled away. And it was a very civil affair.
Once a pair of protesters managed to make their way onto the site during an experiment. For Cosme, this was one of his most memorable tests.
That is the one that I still have nightmares about. Okay, we were doing a test. A radio station in Las Vegas called my office and said, there's protesters are going to stop the test. The security people went out and they combed this test site. I mean, they really did a good job. Could not find anybody. We put loudspeakers up around the test, and we were broadcasting and saying, the test is going to occur in 20 minutes, clear the area, you could be killed. And I was standing next to the guy who was going to punch the button, and we started the countdown. And during this countdown, we had to stop periodically. So it was kind of a confusing countdown. And we got down to, I think it was 22 seconds or so. And I just turned to the guy standing next to him, and I was going to tell him to start, push the button, which there'd been no stopping at that point. And he went to push the button, and as I turned to look at him, the corner of my eye, I saw movement on the TV camera of Ground Zero. And I said, stop. These two girls, they had heard this countdown going all around. This these loudspeakers were really loud. We covered a lot of area. And they got confused too because of all the starts and stops. And so at the last stop, before we were going to finally go into the final count, the two girls start running towards a loudspeaker which happened to be on the other side. They didn't know exactly where the shot was. They were following the loudspeakers, and they were running towards the loudspeaker, and the movement I saw was one of the girls jump over the firing cables and continue running towards the loudspeaker. Anyway, we arrested them. I told the security people, get on the radio, and when you get 10 miles away, I'm going to shoot it. And I did. And they felt it. And when it went off, it was high enough yield that the ground went up 15 feet in the air and then just dropped into a hole. Those girls, let's see, they would have suffered something like 10 G's when they landed. So it killed them. So you ask it's not my most favorite shot, but it's one that I still have nightmares about.
I'm sure. You're so lucky you saw them.
Oh, I can't believe, it was fate, I guess.
We leave our vehicles to walk to the edge of a large crater created from a nuclear detonation underground. The test was called Johnny Boy.
Wow. Unstable.
Look at this.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's blow a hole in the ground.
Well, that was the purpose of it.
Numerous craters dot the Nevada landscape, each representing a different type of test, a unique set of information regarding the area geology, the yield, the depth of burial, and more.
Well, this, folks, is what 30 kilotons does, buried at 318 feet. And that was considered to be optimum depth of burial at the time in rock. So
they would drill down.
Yeah, it was a 36-inch hole, and it was a device placed in it. Now this was actually used...
The pockmarked landscape resembles the surface of the moon. We visit several craters to learn what each test revealed. Some of the tests were designed to explore specific military uses.
And that will keep this area off limits. It will be inadvisable for human health to be here for about 3 weeks. So you don't want to be here. So you can think of, once again, the tactical military application was actually for road passes in the Alps, in hard rock. You want to deny the use of those. Yeah, that denies the use of it. Radiological consequences are relatively slight for any practical effect on human health. And this is what you get for half a kiloton.
Speaking of radiation, some of it remains behind decades after the testing. After visiting one of the craters, the radiation control technician uses a Geiger counter to check our feet.
Clean. And good, thank you. Do you ever have to stop someone?
So far, no, but if they have like a little tiny rock
stuck in their trail?
then we'll just pick it out. You're good, thank you.
A little radiation hasn't stopped scientists from continuing their research in the area. In fact, one of our tour guides recalls that 2 former Los Alamos test designers even chose the site's largest crater, called Sedan Crater, for a special event.
They got married on this platform.
Oh, nice. Nice.
So there's nice pictures of
white wedding gown. He's in a tuxedo.
See it all right here on the platform. So.
On October 1st, 1992, full-scale nuclear testing came to an end when the United States voluntarily joined with Russia, the United Kingdom, and France in a test moratorium. When testing halted, scientists were already in the process of setting up several underground experiments.
We were so busy, we probably would have 10 shots in various stages of assembly out here on this test site. Yeah. And probably 6 holes being drilled in this area at the same time. You'd come out here at night and you would see all these drill rigs. It looked like a city out here when it was.
Oh yeah, it was busy out here.
At that time, Cosme and his team were preparing a test called Ice Cap.
We start thinking of how we can get everything done at once. And we were looking at, maybe we can hang 3 of them in a row instead of 2 of them in a row, that type of thing. So it was a frenzied time trying to get these things off. And as a result, we didn't do any of them.
Today, IceCap's 152-foot tower still stands where it was built over the drilled shaft where the device would have been deployed. We climb the stairs to see the diagnostic rack where the nuclear device would have been attached.
When we were doing this, we had compensated the cables. All the detectors were in. They were ready to start putting in the cables and connecting it to the connectors. That's how close we got when they finally shut us down. So we were within a week to 2 weeks of being able to shoot the thing.
Everything was left exactly as it was the day the testing stopped.
It's like a ghost town of an experiment.
Yeah. Well, it's our Museum of Modern Testing.
I guess it is.
Yeah, we wanted it left not on any thought we'd ever be able to do this shot, but just for this purpose.
We reboard the bus to continue our journey through the history of nuclear testing. Rolling on past the lines of Joshua trees standing in the desert like silent sentries, we travel beneath a cloudless turquoise sky, once filled with mushroom clouds.
Thanks, Jill. In the next installment of our special series on nuclear testing, we explore the final days leading up to the 1992 nuclear testing moratorium and the final underground tests. Thank you for listening to the National Security Science Podcast, stories from the National Security Science magazine. You can find the full magazine at lanel.gov/magazine. And for more great stories from Los Alamos, including several other podcasts, video series, and interactive stories, visit discover.lanel.gov. Finally, thank you to Ron Cosme, Tom Kunkel, Byron Rezovit, and the laboratory's National Security Research Center for including the National Security Science magazine team on a visit to the Nevada National Security Site. Be sure to check out the National Security Science magazine online at discover.lanel.gov to learn more about how better science equals better national security.